That morning, I made the kind of joke that people laugh at for a second and then forget. I never imagined it would change two broken lives forever. When my quiet neighbor walked into my struggling auto shop asking for work, I smiled and said that I didn't need another employee. I needed a wife. The smile on her face disappeared almost instantly, replaced by a sadness so deep it felt older than both of us. At that moment, I had no idea she hadn't laughed because life had already stolen every reason she ever had to smile. What happened after that single careless sentence taught me that sometimes the greatest miracles begin with the words we wish we could take back. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories about kindness, second chances, and the unexpected ways life changes people, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to Bright Acts so you never miss another inspiring story. For nearly 12 years, my world had revolved around engines, oil stains, broken transmissions, and customers who expected miracles on impossible budgets. My auto repair shop wasn't famous, but it had earned a reputation for honest work. People trusted me because I never fixed what wasn't broken, and I never charged more than necessary. Still, honesty didn't pay the bills as easily as it once had. Large repair chains had opened nearby, business had slowed, and every month I wondered whether I'd survive another 30 days. I lived alone in the small house beside the shop. My evenings were quiet enough to hear the ticking of the old kitchen clock. My marriage had ended years earlier after my wife decided she wanted a different future than the one a hard-working mechanic could offer. Since then, I had buried myself in work because engines were easier to understand than people. Machines broke for logical reasons. Hearts did not. About 6 months before everything changed, a young woman moved into the little rental house across the street. She kept mostly to herself. Every morning, she left early carrying a worn backpack, and every evening she returned looking more exhausted than the day before. She always smiled politely when we crossed paths, but it was the kind of smile people wear to hide pain, not happiness. Her name was Emily. The neighborhood slowly learned small pieces of her story, without anyone asking too many questions. She had recently lost her mother after a long illness. Medical bills had swallowed nearly everything she owned. She had worked several temporary jobs, but none lasted. Despite everything, she never complained. She mowed her own tiny lawn, shoveled snow in winter, helped elderly neighbors carry groceries, and somehow always found the strength to greet everyone with kindness. One rainy Monday morning, she walked into my garage wearing faded jeans, an old white top beneath a light jacket, and holding a folder containing what looked like her resume. She stood quietly while I finished tightening a bolt beneath a pickup truck. When I finally wiped the grease from my hands and looked at her, she asked if I happened to be hiring anyone. Without thinking, I laughed and answered that I didn't need another employee. I needed a wife, not someone to organize paperwork. The words came out as harmless humor, but the moment I saw her expression, I regretted saying them. Her eyes dropped toward the floor, and for a second they looked as though they were carrying years of disappointment. She forced a tiny smile anyway and apologized for bothering me before turning toward the door. Something inside me refused to let her leave. I stopped her before she reached the entrance and asked to see her resume. It turned out she had experience answering phones, handling invoices, scheduling appointments, and managing customer records. She had even taken accounting classes before leaving college to care for her sick mother. My shop desperately needed exactly those skills. By the end of that afternoon, Emily had become my first office manager. The transformation happened almost immediately. Within weeks, missed appointments disappeared. Customers received friendly reminder calls. Bills were organized instead of stacked in messy piles. Reviews online suddenly mentioned how welcoming the office felt. Business slowly began returning, not because I had become a better mechanic, but because people finally felt cared for from the moment they walked through the front door. More importantly, the lonely silence inside the garage disappeared. Emily filled ordinary days with quiet warmth. She remembered customers' birthdays, kept fresh coffee ready every morning, and somehow convinced frustrated people to smile while waiting for expensive repairs. Watching her interact with strangers taught me something I had forgotten after years of disappointment. Kindness is often stronger than talent. One evening, after closing, I noticed her sitting alone in the office staring at a photograph. She quickly tucked it away when she realized I had entered. She admitted it was the last picture taken with her mother. She confessed that losing her had left her feeling like she no longer belonged anywhere. Every job since then had reminded her how temporary life could be. She feared becoming invisible. For the first time in years, I understood someone else's loneliness because it sounded exactly like my own. Our conversations grew longer after work. We talked while organizing inventory, cleaning tools, or locking the garage each night. We shared stories about failure, regret, forgiveness, and the strange ways grief changes people. Neither of us tried to fix the other's pain. We simply listened. Months passed. The shop became busier than it had ever been. We hired another mechanic, then another. Customers recommended us because they trusted not only our repairs, but also the compassion they experienced every visit. Families brought homemade cookies during holidays. Children drew pictures of cars and taped them to our waiting room wall. Somehow, a struggling garage had become part of the community. Then everything nearly disappeared again. A powerful storm swept through town, flooding the entire industrial district. Water poured into the shop overnight, destroying expensive equipment and damaging several customer vehicles awaiting repair. Insurance covered only part of the losses. The estimated cost of reopening was more money than I had saved in 10 years. I sat inside the ruined garage surrounded by muddy water, convinced it was finally over. Emily arrived carrying coffee and silently looked around the destroyed building. Instead of crying, blaming fate, or giving up, she began cleaning. One broom became two. Soon neighbors joined us. Customers arrived with buckets, generators, cleaning supplies, and food. Local businesses donated materials. Mechanics from competing shops volunteered their own time. Watching dozens of people work together made me realize something remarkable. They weren't saving a building. They were saving what that building had come to represent. Several weeks later, the garage reopened stronger than before. Fresh paint covered repaired walls. New equipment replaced what had been lost. On opening day, the parking lot filled with customers cheering as the first repaired vehicle rolled out of the service bay. Standing beside Emily that morning, I remembered the careless joke I had made months earlier. Only then did I fully understand why it had hurt her. She later admitted she had walked into the shop that day feeling completely defeated. She had been rejected from countless jobs and was only days away from losing her rental home. My joke had briefly convinced her she would hear another rejection. Yet the decision to stop her before she left had changed everything. The truth was that she hadn't only saved my struggling business. She had rescued the lonely man hiding behind it. Years later, people still ask how our little garage survived when so many others closed. They expect me to talk about better equipment or smarter business decisions. Instead, I tell them success began the day someone walked through my front door carrying nothing more than hope, courage, and a resume. Before we finish, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment and tell us. Have you ever experienced a single moment or one unexpected act of kindness that completely changed your life? If this story touched your heart or reminded you that second chances can appear when we least expect them, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Bright Acts. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Because sometimes the greatest repairs aren't made with tools, but with patience, forgiveness, and the simple decision to believe in another person when they have almost stopped believing in themselves.